The Shattered Vow. The autumn rain painted silver streaks across the floor-to-ceiling windows of Thornfield Estate's penthouse office. Marcus Thornfield stood with his hands clasped behind his back, surveying the Manhattan skyline with the satisfaction of a man who had conquered it. At 42, he had transformed a modest property management company into a real estate empire worth over $300 million. Buildings bearing his name dotted the city like monuments to ambition. Yet for all his success in acquiring properties, he had failed spectacularly at maintaining the one thing that truly mattered. Elena Rossi had married Marcus 9 years ago when he was still clawing his way up from middle-class obscurity. She had been an elementary school teacher with warm hazel eyes and a laugh that could fill a room. Where Marcus saw opportunities and profit margins, Elena saw people and possibilities. She had believed in him when investors scoffed, had eaten ramen dinners without complaint during the lean years, and had celebrated each victory as though it were her own. She was the foundation upon which his empire was built, though he had long since forgotten to acknowledge it. Their brownstone in the Upper West Side was decorated with Elena's touch. Fresh flowers in every room, photographs from their early years together, children's artwork from her former students framed on the walls. But lately, Marcus barely noticed these details. His world had shrunk to spreadsheets, zoning meetings, and the relentless pursuit of the next deal. When Elena told him she was pregnant 3 months ago, he had hugged her and smiled. But his mind was already calculating how fatherhood might affect his schedule. The affair with Vanessa Chen had begun 6 months earlier at a charity auction. Vanessa owned the Morrison Gallery in Chelsea, a sleek space where Manhattan's elite gathered to sip champagne and pretend to understand abstract expressionism. She was 34, sophisticated in a way that felt effortlessly cool, with sharp cheekbones and darker hair that fell in a perfect curtain to her shoulders. More importantly, she understood Marcus's world. She spoke his language of ambition and acquisition. When they talked, it was about market trends, investment opportunities, and the intoxicating game of accumulating wealth and influence. Elena, meanwhile, had begun talking about nursery colors and baby names. She glowed with maternal anticipation, but Marcus found himself increasingly restless in her presence. He loved her, he told himself repeatedly, but Vanessa represented something different. An escape from responsibility, a return to the excitement of the chase. Their meetings began innocently enough with coffee after gallery openings, but soon progressed to intimate dinners and weekend getaways to his property in the Hamptons when Elena thought he was negotiating deals upstate. Marcus convinced himself he could manage both worlds. He was, after all, a man who juggled million-dollar transactions daily. Surely he could handle 2 relationships. The rationalization came easily. Elena would never know. He would be more attentive after the baby came. This was just a phase, a last grasp at freedom before the responsibility of fatherhood settled on his shoulders like a weight. But lies, like investments, compound over time, and the day of reckoning always arrives. It was Vanessa who suggested Bellissimo. The restaurant was legendary, a 3 Michelin-star Italian establishment in Tribeca where celebrities and politicians dined in private booths behind velvet curtains. Marcus had proposed there to Elena 9 years ago, a detail he had conveniently forgotten when making the reservation. He booked under the name Thompson, a precaution that felt clever at the time. The evening of October 15th began with promise. Marcus arrived at 7 wearing his charcoal Tom Ford suit, the one Elena had given him for his 40th birthday. Vanessa met him at the door in a black dress that hugged her figure, her usual ponytail replaced by an elegant updo. They were seated in the Rossini room, a private alcove where soft jazz played and candles cast dancing shadows on the exposed brick walls. "To new beginnings," Vanessa said, raising her glass of Barolo. Marcus clinked his glass against hers, ignoring the uncomfortable twist in his stomach. Across town, Elena was meeting her sister Rebecca for what she thought would be a quiet dinner. Rebecca, a criminal defense attorney with a nose for deception, had insisted on Bellissimo. She had heard rumors, whispers from a paralegal whose cousin worked at the Morrison Gallery, and she wanted to protect her sister from a truth she prayed wasn't real. When Elena and Rebecca walked into Bellissimo at 7:45, Elena was radiant in a flowing blue dress that accommodated her growing belly. She chatted excitedly about the ultrasound scheduled for next week, about whether the baby would have Marcus's green eyes or her hazel ones. Rebecca smiled and nodded, but her eyes scanned the restaurant with professional suspicion. The hostess led them past the main dining room toward the private alcoves. That was when Elena saw him. Through a gap in the velvet curtain, she glimpsed Marcus leaning across a table, his hand covering another woman's, his expression tender in a way she had not seen directed at her in months. Time seemed to freeze. Elena's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, as if to shield the baby from what was unfolding. Rebecca saw it too. "Elena, we should go," she whispered urgently. But Elena was already moving forward, propelled by a force beyond conscious thought. She pulled aside the curtain. The intimate scene before her, the wine, the candlelight, the guilty shock on Marcus's face, seared itself into her memory with perfect clarity. "Marcus!" Her voice was barely a whisper. He stood abruptly, knocking over his wine glass. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. "Elena, what are you? This isn't... Who is she?" Elena's voice cracked. Vanessa remained seated, her expression a mixture of defiance and embarrassment. Marcus looked between the two women, his mouth opening and closing without sound. The great negotiator, the man who had talked his way into boardrooms and convinced investors to bet millions on his vision, could not find a single word. Elena felt the room tilting. The baby, her marriage, her entire life seemed to be crumbling beneath her feet. She turned and ran, Rebecca chasing after her, through the restaurant where diners stared, past the hostess stand, out into the rain-soaked street. Behind her, Marcus finally found his voice, shouting her name, but Elena kept running until her legs gave out and she collapsed on the sidewalk 3 blocks away, Rebecca catching her just as everything went black. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret. Elena woke to the harsh fluorescent lights and the steady beep of a fetal heart monitor. For a blissful moment, she forgot everything. Then reality crashed back with brutal force. Rebecca sat in the chair beside her bed, still wearing her dress from dinner, now wrinkled and stained with rain. "The baby?" Elena's voice was hoarse. "Fine. Perfectly healthy. Your blood pressure spiked and you fainted from the shock. They want to keep you overnight for observation." Rebecca squeezed her hand. "Marcus has been in the waiting room for hours. Security has been keeping him out per my instructions." Elena closed her eyes. The image of Marcus with that woman replayed in her mind like a cruel film on loop, his hand on hers. The intimate lean across the table. The wine they were sharing. How long had this been happening? How many lies had he told? Every late night at the office, every business trip, every distracted kiss goodbye suddenly took on sinister new meaning. "I don't want to see him," Elena said quietly. "Not now. Not ever," Rebecca nodded. "I figured. I've already called Patricia." Patricia Greenwood was Rebecca's colleague, a divorce attorney known for destroying cheating spouses in court. "She'll meet with you tomorrow." But even as Elena agreed, a different plan was forming in her mind. She did not want a public divorce, did not want to be tabloid fodder or a cautionary tale whispered about at charity galas. She did not want Marcus's money, his properties, his apologies, or his excuses. She wanted something far more radical. She wanted to disappear. 3 days later, while Marcus was meeting with his own attorneys, preparing for the legal battle he assumed was coming, Elena withdrew $200,000 from their joint savings account. It was money she had inherited from her grandmother, money she had contributed to their marriage. She packed 2 suitcases with clothes, photographs of her parents who had passed away years earlier, and her grandmother's jewelry. She left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to a single sheet of paper with 4 words written in her neat handwriting. "Don't look for me." By the time Marcus returned home that evening, Elena Rossi Thornfield had vanished. The first year of searching nearly destroyed Marcus. He hired private investigators who tracked her credit cards to Portland, Oregon, then lost her trail completely. He discovered she had closed all her accounts, abandoned her phone, severed every digital connection. It was as though she had stepped off the edge of the world. He flew to Portland 7 times, walking through neighborhoods, showing her photograph to strangers, checking hospitals and clinics. Nothing. His business suffered. Deals fell through because he could not focus. His board of directors expressed concern. The press speculated about his personal troubles, and investors grew nervous. Vanessa had disappeared from his life as quickly as she had entered it, sending a brief text the night of the restaurant incident. "I think it's best we don't see each other again." Even she had not wanted to be part of the wreckage. Marcus attended therapy sessions where he talked circles around his guilt. He renovated the brownstone, erasing every trace of Elena as though that might erase his shame. But late at night, he found himself in what would have been the nursery, sitting on the floor in the dark, wondering whether he had a son or daughter somewhere in the world, wondering if Elena was safe, wondering if she hated him as much as he had come to hate himself. Meanwhile, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Portland's Hawthorne district, Elena was building a new life from ashes. She had legally changed her name to Elena Rossi Morrison, reclaiming her mother's maiden name. She enrolled in a graduate program at Portland State University, studying pediatric therapy. The inheritance money would not last forever, but it bought her time to reinvent herself. On March 23rd, at Providence Portland Medical Center, Elena gave birth to a 7-pound, 4-ounce baby girl. She had her mother's hazel eyes and a dusting of dark hair. Elena named her Violet, after her grandmother who had given her the means to escape. As she held her daughter for the first time, Elena made a silent vow. Violet would grow up knowing she was loved, that she was enough, that she did not need a father who treated commitments like disposable contracts. The years passed with surprising swiftness. Elena earned her master's degree and began working at Children's Bridge Therapy Center, specializing in early childhood development. She made friends carefully, never discussing her past, always vague about Violet's father. "He's not in the picture," she would say with a sad smile that discouraged further questions. She dated occasionally, but never seriously. Trust, once shattered so completely, was not easily rebuilt. Violet grew into a precocious child with Elena's warmth and, disturbingly, Marcus's sharp green eyes. She asked about her father sometimes, and Elena told her the truth in age-appropriate pieces. "Your daddy and I loved each other once, but sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. He doesn't know about you, and that's okay. We're doing just fine. Just the two of us." It was not until Violet's 3rd birthday that fate decided the separation had lasted long enough. Elena had been invited to present at the National Pediatric Therapy Conference in Seattle, a significant career milestone. She almost declined, worried about traveling so close to Marcus's sphere of influence. But Seattle was not Manhattan, and 3 years was a long time. Surely she could attend a professional conference without the universe conspiring against her. The Washington State Convention Center buzzed with therapists, physicians, and researchers from across the country. Elena delivered her presentation on trauma-informed care for preschoolers to enthusiastic applause. Afterward, she wandered the exhibition hall, collecting brochures and networking with colleagues. She was laughing at something a fellow therapist had said when she felt eyes on her, that peculiar sensation of being watched. She turned and froze. Across the crowded hall, standing beside a booth for therapeutic equipment, was Marcus Thornfield. He looked older, grayer at the temples, with new lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. He was staring at her as though she were a ghost, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked desperately like hope. Their eyes met across 50 feet of space and 3 years of silence. Elena's first instinct was to run, but her legs would not cooperate. Marcus began moving toward her, navigating through the crowd, and Elena felt the carefully constructed walls of her new life beginning to crack. She had always known this moment might come. She had prepared speeches, practiced responses, steeled herself for confrontation. But nothing could have prepared her for the way her heart lurched when Marcus reached her. Close enough that she could see the devastation in his eyes. Close enough to hear his voice break when he whispered, "Elena, thank God, I've been looking everywhere." She took a step back, reclaiming her space. "You shouldn't have been looking at all. Where have you been? Are you okay? The baby." His eyes dropped to her stomach, which was flat beneath her professional blazer. The calculation happened in real time across his face. You had the baby. Where? When? Elena, please, I need to know if I have a son or daughter. People were beginning to stare. Elena felt her professional composure crumbling. You need to leave, Marcus. Now! I can't. Not again. Not for another 3 years. His voice was raw with emotion. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but please just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain. Let me apologize properly. 5 minutes? Elena's voice rose despite her efforts to remain calm. You want 5 minutes to explain 3 years of my life? 3 years of pregnancy, childbirth, and raising a child alone? 5 minutes to justify why you threw away everything we built for someone else? Marcus flinched as though she had struck him. You're right. There's no justification. What I did was unforgivable. But Elena, please, I've changed. I've spent every day since that night trying to find you, trying to make things right. Just talk to me. Please. Elena looked at the man she had once loved more than anything in the world. She saw genuine anguish in his face, real remorse in his eyes. But she also remembered the intimate lean across the candlelit table, the hand covering another woman's, the months of lies that had preceded that moment. We can't do this here, she said finally. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks north. Stella's, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Come alone. And Marcus? She fixed him with a hard stare. This doesn't mean forgiveness. It doesn't mean reconciliation. It means conversation. 5 minutes. That's all you get. She turned and walked away before he could respond. Before the tears threatening to spill could betray her. Before the part of her that had never stopped loving him could override the part that knew better. Behind her, Marcus stood motionless in the crowded convention center, clutching the fragile thread of hope she had just offered like a drowning man clutching driftwood. The reckoning, Marcus arrived at Stella's coffee house 40 minutes early. He sat at a corner table with an untouched cup of coffee growing cold, watching the door with the intensity of a man awaiting judgment. He had not slept. After leaving the convention center, he had returned to his hotel room and paced until dawn, rehearsing and discarding 1,000 different speeches. How did you apologize for destroying someone's life? How did you compress 3 years of regret into 5 minutes? When Elena walked through the door at precisely 9 o'clock, Marcus's breath caught. She wore jeans and a simple gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Without the professional armor of yesterday's blazer and makeup, she looked younger, more like the woman he had married. But her eyes held a hardness that had not been there before, a wariness that he had put there. She sat across from him without preamble. Your 5 minutes start now. Marcus leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve this conversation. But I need you to know that what happened at Bellissimo was the worst mistake of my entire life. The affair with Vanessa, it wasn't love. It wasn't even really about her. It was about me being a coward, running from responsibility, from growing up, from becoming the husband and father you deserved. Elena's expression remained neutral. Continue. I've spent 3 years trying to find you. I hired investigators, I flew to Portland a dozen times, I walked through every neighborhood showing your picture. I wasn't trying to force you back. I just needed to know you were safe, that the baby was healthy, that I hadn't destroyed you completely. His voice cracked. And I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly devastatingly sorry. Your 5 minutes are almost up, Elena said quietly. What do you want from me, Marcus? I want to know my child. I want to provide for you both. I want to be a father. Even if I can never be your husband again. He paused, searching her face. Is it a boy or girl? Elena was silent for a long moment. Through the coffee shop window, morning sunlight painted golden squares on the worn wooden floor. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled. Other patrons chatted and laughed, oblivious to the life-altering conversation happening in the corner. A girl, Elena said finally. Her name is Violet. She's 3 years old. She has your eyes and my stubbornness. She loves dinosaurs and strawberries and a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Hopkins. She asks about you sometimes, and I tell her the truth in ways she can understand. That her daddy made mistakes, that grown-ups sometimes hurt each other, but that it has nothing to do with her. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Can I meet her? That's what I've been asking myself all night. Whether you deserve to know her. Whether it's fair to her to introduce chaos into her stable life? Elena's voice hardened. Because that's what you are, Marcus. Chaos. You're the hurricane that destroyed everything in its path 3 years ago. What guarantee do I have that you won't do it again? None, Marcus admitted. I can't prove I've changed with words. I can only show you over time. But Elena, she deserves to know her father. And I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life being the man I should have been. Elena stood abruptly. I need to think about this. I'm staying at the Marriott downtown, room 417. Come by tomorrow at 2. But Marcus? She fixed him with a fierce stare. If you meet Violet, you're committing to being in her life consistently. No disappearing, no broken promises, no putting your business before her. Children aren't business deals. You can't negotiate terms and walk away when it gets difficult. So before you knock on that door tomorrow, you need to be absolutely certain you can handle that responsibility. She left before he could respond. Marcus sat alone with his cold coffee, feeling the weight of her words. For 3 years, he had fantasized about this moment, about finding Elena and fixing everything. But he had never truly considered what being a father meant beyond abstract concepts of child support and visitation rights. Now he had less than 24 hours to decide if he was capable of being what Violet needed. That night, Marcus did something he had not done in years. He called his own father, Thomas Thornfield, a retired contractor in Queens who Marcus had barely spoken to since his business took off. The conversation was awkward at first, colored by years of emotional distance. Dad, if you could go back and change one thing about raising me, what would it be? Thomas was quiet for a moment. I'd be present. Really present. Not just physically there, but emotionally invested. I worked 80-hour weeks building that construction business, and I missed your childhood. Missed your baseball games, your school plays, your heartbreaks. I provided financially, but I wasn't a father. I was a paycheck. Don't make my mistakes, son. The next day at exactly 2 o'clock, Marcus stood outside room 417, heart pounding. He had purchased a stuffed triceratops from the hotel gift shop, remembering Elena's mention of dinosaurs. When Elena opened the door, she studied his face carefully before stepping aside. Violet sat on the bed, coloring in a dinosaur coloring book. She looked up as Marcus entered, and he saw his own green eyes staring back at him from a face that was pure Elena, his daughter. His chest constricted with an emotion so powerful it nearly knocked him over. Violet, this is someone I'd like you to meet, Elena said gently. This is Marcus. He's your daddy. Violet tilted her head, studying Marcus with solemn curiosity. You're really my daddy? Marcus knelt down to her eye level, tears streaming down his face. Yes, sweetheart. I'm really your daddy, and I'm so sorry I haven't been here before now. Mommy says you made mistakes. Violet's voice was matter-of-fact, the way only a 3-year-old's could be. Did you say sorry? I did, to your mommy. And now I'm saying sorry to you, too. Violet considered this, then noticed the stuffed triceratops in his hand. Her eyes lit up. Is that for me? If you want it? I heard you like dinosaurs. She took the toy carefully, hugging it to her chest. I'm gonna name him Mr. Stompy. Thank you, Daddy. The word daddy broke something open in Marcus. He glanced at Elena, who was watching the interaction with tears in her own eyes, her expression complicated. Grief, anger, hope, and fear all mingled together. The next hour passed in a blur. Marcus sat on the floor with Violet, coloring dinosaurs and listening to her chatter about her preschool friends, her favorite foods, her elaborate, imaginative games. Elena watched from the chair by the window, occasionally interjecting details or redirecting Violet's boundless energy. It was simultaneously the most natural and most terrifying thing Marcus had ever experienced. When Violet's attention span finally waned and Elena put on a cartoon, Marcus and Elena stepped into the hallway to talk. She's incredible, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. She's everything I didn't know I needed. She is, Elena agreed. And now that you've met her, we need to establish ground rules. I live in Portland. My job is there, my life is there. I'm not moving back to New York. I understand. I can fly to Portland every weekend. Or every other weekend, whatever works. I can video chat during the week. Marcus! Elena held up a hand. Before we discuss logistics, you need to understand something. This isn't about us getting back together. That ship sailed 3 years ago. This is about Violet having a father. Can you handle that? Seeing me regularly, being in my life but not with me? Marcus met her eyes. It'll be the hardest thing I've ever done. Because I still love you, Elena. I never stopped. But I understand that I killed your love for me. I accept that. And yes, I can handle it because Violet deserves better than I gave you. Elena nodded slowly. There's something else you should know. Violet was born with a minor heart condition. It's manageable, but she needs regular cardiology appointments and may need surgery when she's older. The medical bills have been... She trailed off, pride warring with practicality. I'll take care of it, Marcus said immediately. All of it. Medical expenses, education, whatever she needs. I want to set up a trust fund for her. And child support, retroactive to her birth. I don't want your money out of guilt, Marcus. It's not guilt. It's responsibility. Let me do this, please. Let me provide for my daughter the way I should have been doing all along. Over the next several months, a new normal emerged. Marcus flew to Portland every other weekend. At first, the visits were supervised by Elena, stilted affairs where everyone was on their best behavior. But gradually, Violet's natural exuberance broke through the awkwardness. She taught Marcus the names of all her dinosaurs. He read her bedtime stories and learned to braid her hair, though his attempts were comically lopsided compared to Elena's neat plaits. Elena watched her daughter fall in love with her father, and her own feelings became impossibly tangled. She saw genuine change in Marcus. His business took a back seat to his parenting duties. He never canceled visits. He video called Violet every night without fail. The man who had once put work above everything was now leaving board meetings early to catch flights to Portland. But trust, once shattered, could not be rebuilt overnight. Elena maintained careful boundaries. They communicated about Violet, but never strayed into personal territory. Marcus stayed in hotels, never at her apartment. They were cordial, cooperative, but distant. The crisis came 6 months into their arrangement. Violet collapsed at preschool, her heart condition flaring up unexpectedly. Elena called Marcus from the emergency room, her voice breaking with terror. It's Violet. Her heart. They're saying she needs surgery, Marcus. She needs surgery now. He was on a plane within 2 hours. The surgery took 7 hours, and Marcus and Elena spent every minute in the waiting room together, old grievances temporarily forgotten in the face of shared fear for their child. When the surgeon finally emerged with good news, the procedure was successful. Violet would make a full recovery. They collapsed into each other's arms. 3 years of careful distance evaporating in shared relief. In the days that followed, as Violet recovered in the hospital, Marcus and Elena talked. Really talked. Not about logistics or schedules, but about pain and forgiveness. About the people they had been and the people they had become. I don't think I can ever trust you the way I did before, Elena admitted one night, sitting beside Violet's hospital bed while their daughter slept peacefully. That version of us is gone. I know, Marcus said quietly. But maybe we could build something new. Not a marriage, not a romance, but a real partnership in raising Violet, co-parents who genuinely respect each other. Elena studied his face in the dim hospital lighting. I think I'd like that. For her sake. And maybe eventually, for ours too. It was not the fairy tale ending Marcus had fantasized about during his 3-year search. There was no passionate reconciliation, no moving speech that erased the past. But as he sat in that hospital room, watching his daughter sleep while her mother dozed in the chair beside him, Marcus understood that some things, once broken, could not be restored to their original form. Instead, they had to be rebuilt into something different, something scarred but stronger, something honest. And perhaps he thought that was actually better. Because the first time, he had not appreciated what he had. This time, he knew exactly what he stood to lose. 3 years later, Violet would be a healthy 7-year-old who split her time between Portland and New York. Marcus would have relocated his company's headquarters to the West Coast, claiming better tech opportunities but really just wanting to be closer to his daughter. He and Elena would never remarry, but they would become friends, real friends, bound by love for the remarkable child they had created. On Violet's 7th birthday, as they watched her blow out candles, Elena would lean over and whisper to Marcus, "You turned out to be a good father. I'm glad she knows you." And Marcus would respond, "Thank you for giving me the chance to try." It was not the ending he deserved, but it was the ending he had earned through 3 years of consistent action, of choosing his daughter over his ego, of showing up day after day even when it was uncomfortable. The price of betrayal, Marcus learned, was not just loss. It was the long, difficult road of proving you could become someone worth trusting again. And some roads, once walked, changed you forever. The end.